Yes, that's an architectural meeting, and we have a couple of topics for today. Lena, can you start them? You have the first one.
Yeah, sure. Do you see my screen now?
Yes.
Can you hear me? Or no?
Yes.
Oh, perfect. And do you see my screen?
Yes.
So once Magento coding standard was delivered to Magento, we faced with some issues, and there was some minor bugs discovered, and there was a need to create new release. So the question about versioning appeared. That's why I created this document and described some specific use cases related to coding standard and the proposal how we will handle releases. So the main idea is like to define what we like what kind of changes can we like can we assume that it was like patch changes, minor or major? And I want to discuss this question with you. For example, it's like for bug fix to existing rule that just prevent false positive behavior, it's definitely a patch release. For example, what if we remove a rule from the rule set? What if this is Magento written by us rule, or if it's out of box rule that is the part of PHP code sniffer? I assume this is also a patch release. About unit tests, I think there is no doubt that's a patch release. About minor changes, this happens in case if we want to add new rule to the coding standard, or like if we want to add new generic rule, or we want to implement some Magento specific and add this rule to the rule set. And breaking change, I assume it's related to namespace changes. If, for example, if you want to change the name of coding standard, it is right now Magento 2, and we want to change to something like Magento, just Magento without or Magento CS or something like that. Or if we change platform requirements, for example, we require instead of PHP code sniffer 3.1, we start to apply 4.0, etc. I need your thoughts here because I'm not sure about the biggest concern is removing tools. Can we assume that it's patch release or not? What do you think about this?
And you mentioned there were already some issues with the updates. What issues did you have?
Yeah, there was some, let's say, unexpected behavior. One of the out-of-box sniff that was not written by us, that was PHP CS generic sniff, that was trying to detect if function doesn't contain throw annotation in case if it can throw an exception. And the unexpected behavior was that it doesn't work with inherit doc annotation. So it doesn't take inherit doc into account. So what our only one way to fix this was to remove this out of box rule from the rule set XML file.
Okay. So as I understand, how we base our decision on whether it's patch, minor, or major is on the impact on people who use it, and specifically on whether, if somebody just uses our sniffs, if something will start giving failures, if some tests will start failing, on the same code base, correct?
Yeah. Sorry.
Yeah, but we don't, at least from what I see from the rules that you specified, but we don't care so much about people who rely on those sniffs. So, for example, you say that removing a sniff is a patch release. It means that we just want people to validate their code against that. But if we remove something, nobody will be upset.
Yes, that's the main point. So in case if we do some checks losest, it's a patch release. If we want to enforce and make our coding standards stricter, it's a minor release. Because in that case, people need to fix their code.
Okay.
Yeah, in my opinion, I think we should add removing rules from standard to minor release, because if I or my team asking me, hey, which rules in the current coding standard, then I can tell, yeah, these are the rules and this is how the verifying. And if we removing rules from a patch or by a patch, I think it should be a minor, because then the team has the possibility to commit on a minor version or not on a patch. But I think removing is not the best way on the patch.
Removing Magento specific or removing any kind of, like, even out of box sniff? I didn't get that point.
I think both.
Okay.
So yeah, I would also move them to the minor release, but then maybe adding new rules would be in major. And again, we are talking about the sniffs package, correct? About the
Yes.
Right? And in Magento itself, we can define another rule that will, like, we can define another rule on which version we depend, right, for the sniffs.
We specified this in composer.json file.
Yes. So right now, what's the dependency? Is it on what, on minor version?
Yeah, on patch.
On patch, so it's strict.
Right now it's on patch.
So I don't know. I would move removing to minor and adding to major.
So why removing out of the box sniff from rules that is minor? Like, basically, it's not going to break anybody. But
Yes, but if somebody relies on this behavior, that something will be validated. So there are probably two types of users. One type of users who just want to validate against some rule set and they don't care what rule set it is, and another set of users is probably who expect this specific behavior, like the specific.
so we were thinking about there's custom sniff and somebody extends it. And in this case, it makes sense that we cannot just remove our sniffs without breaking them. But at the same time, if you just remove any out-of-the-box sniff from our rule set, it means that check will become less strict, and at least we won't break anybody. I don't know. Like, do we want to?
But minor should also not break anybody. But at least different possibility for different kinds of users to depend on. So I think adding is major because it will break your builds, right? And you need to do something.
Then probably removal of Magento specific rule set is also major, right? So you can break somebody potentially.
Why?
If somebody extends from your rule set and from your sniff, and you remove sniff, not remove sniff from rule set, but delete sniff is. In this case, it probably also matches.
What I mean is, if the code sniffer get less strict and a team has a commitment, like we try to implement a standard or something like that, and Magento removing this from the standard rule set because there's not some definition in the coding guidelines. Maybe the team don't see, oh, there's a rule removed, but our team has committed to this rule. This is why I think it should be a minor release, not a patch release. Because if you are using a standard in a team, you're trying to have an alignment with your development team, and all body follow the rules, not trying to do their own stuff. And if we are committing us to a standard, and then some default standard is removed from the rule set XML, then we cannot follow anymore the standard because some rule is missing. Maybe it's an important rule for this development team. This is my opinion. Because most agency will use the standard for their development team. This is the use case of the standard.
So okay, so I don't know. Then I propose out of the box, removing out of the box rules to the minor release, moving Magento specific standard to major, like because somebody can extend it.
Okay, I would like to ask you to add your comments to the
I'm adding
proposal. Okay, thank you.
And then looks like everything that is right now in minor should be moved to major. Rule, implementing rule, changing behavior of an existing Magento rule.
Okay.
Yeah, concerns about major space changing requirements. Yeah. Okay, yes, I left the comments there. If anybody has concerns, please comment on that on the proposal so we can continue the discussion.
Okay, thank you. I will go to the next topic. So we have open pull request to Magento coding standard. This is the implementation for the rule that proxies and interceptors cannot be explicitly requested in constructors. My question is, I would like you to show examples what we are trying to find. We are trying to find that in case even if it's in the use and it's explicitly requested in the constructor, we throw an error. So the most important question is, what type of severity is this? Can we reject extensions because of this? So I believe that in case if somebody decided to make such mistake, it will like break the part of interception functionality or proxy functionality. Is it correct statement?
I don't think it will break right now, but there are no guarantees probably in the future because such interceptor may not be generated in the future.
So yeah, And question is, like severity 10 means that in case if somebody will make such mistake in extension, extension will be automatically rejected. Is this an expected behavior?
In my opinion, yes. Any other opinions?
You need to check it, because proxy definitely will work in GI configuration and constructor normally. It's not problem. It's just recommendation to not work. But for interceptor and
So you believe that proxy can be explicitly requested in constructor?
yeah, it's definitely will work.
Okay, it will work, but it's not recommended.
Yeah, it's not recommended. About interceptor, I don't know, but who just I never see that someone tried to use interceptors.
I run this check against Magento, and there are a lot of findings for proxies and interceptors as well. Unfortunately.
So it will work because it relies on the same methodology functionality, but it was not intended to work this way. And that's why I believe static test is really a way to prevent it.
So you think it's a high severity issue?
So we should ask maybe extension developers. We have some guys on the call right now, like community developers. How severe would it be for them, or how problematic would it be if it starts failing, if they have proxy dependency or interceptor dependency?
I missed your point. So what do you mean?
Yeah, so we should ask extension developers as well, because for core, obviously, it's not a problem if we do that. But it might be a problem for extension developers.
What do you mean for core it's not a problem?
We can fix it easily.
No, but I think so. What severity means is that this extension will be less reliable, right? So the higher the severity, the less reliable is an extension.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, in my opinion, it's really unreliable implementation. It may work today, but it may be broken tomorrow. There are no guarantees that there will be the same proxy or the same interceptor in the future. And it's also, yes, not recommended practice. I don't know, I would keep high severity there.
Okay, I will keep 10 and discuss this with extension developers. Okay. What we have, and now I added 2 topics also to pull request to coding standard. Lars, do you want to proceed, or you want me to go over this?
You can do it. I don't have a problem. Or I can also present. What do you like?
Okay, I will start if you will have something to add. Let's do it this way. So previously we agreed about the rule that slow array function should, like array merge, should not be used in loop. So here is the example of bad code, and here is the example how to fix it. Lars implemented this rule, and when I ran this against Magento, we found this amount of warnings. It's 280. The question is, are we still up to do this and to accept this rule?
Why not? That's easy to fix, right?
Again, because in case if there will be finding in changed file, even if the person didn't touch this specific functionality and it will be in the changed file, the developer needs to fix this as well?
We have this problem in other places.
Are developers aware about this?
I don't think right now. I mean, there are so many best practices and not best practices. I think in general, yes, it's useful, but probably for very small arrays or for small arrays, it most likely doesn't really matter. So people can do.
That's right. Yeah.
So I actually have a question. Are we suggesting, I believe in Sniffer we can suggest implementation. We say that it just should not be used, or we say how to fix it? We should say how to
we
fix
just we just say that here is the warning message.
Yeah, I believe what we need to do, like usually there is contextual help, and we should make sure that contextual help gives instruction how to fix it, and then you don't
What
even
do you mean under contextual help? It's like code sniffer. We can just show the message. We can add to the message how to fix this.
PHP Storm usually shows you warning in contextual message. So if you encounter some issue, message, and if we add instructions on how to fix it to that message, then it will be obvious.
Currently there are 2 points. First, I found a bug in the PHP Storm plugin if I implementing this stuff, because I was verifying and some test cases, and I implement a lot of test cases in this pull request. It's I think 20 test cases or something like that, with different implementation of for each and for, and setter and getters, and then I run this over the Magento code and verifying most issues manually. And then I found a bug in the PHP plugin, and then I open a pull request for the plugin, as also I change my implementation and run again and run again and run again. And now we have many findings, but some findings are not so easy to fix. I do some fixes for MSI. Result, I think we had 2 or 3 failing integration tests because some edge cases are not covered by the good example, because you can, if you have very complex arrays, you can also do things wrong. It's not so easy to this is the pattern and you can refactoring like that. It works for 99%, but you have 1%, then you need a other way to refactor this code to a better way. And this is currently, if you have very complex arrays, it can be very complex to refactor to a better performance way.
To be honest, I would just add this example which you have pointed at for PHP 5.6. I would just add it to warning message, and this will be a good hint how to refactor it.
You mean only this line or the whole example?
Maybe just this line even. Or you can add the whole example. We just need to look how it looks like in PHP Storm and how it looks like in builds. When we get some failures, we need to make sure that it looks.
Yeah, that's the problem, because adding one line is like what PHP Code Sniffer definitely can do, and adding multi-line suggestions, it's not what was designed for.
If we have some external, if we have some reference, we can just give reference as well.
Yeah, maybe we should think about some catalog of, maybe even it can be in this file, in the PHP, in this code sniff file, somewhere in the comment or whatever. And then we can put a link to it in the build, I don't know. Or think about some other catalog of recommendations.
It can be even just useful catalog for people to refer to, just to get general understanding of best practices.
Actually, we can use wiki for that, like create separate page to with like some specific rules with recommendations, or describe all of the rules with recommendations how to fix.
We can even do it in DevDocs.
Yeah.
DevDocs
Yeah.
is a more generic place.
Okay, I will think how to manage this, but anyway, we accept this.
Yes.
And the last one, also based on technical guidelines, the rule is that no try block detected when processing system resources. The implementation was, so in case if we find a generic PHP function that starts with stream, socket, or curl, we want to see they wrapped with try catch. Just want to make sure this is the expected behavior.
Once again, what do we look for?
We look for PHP generic function that starts with curl, stream, or socket, and we want to see them wrapped with try catch. If it's not wrapped in the function, we will throw a warning.
So I guess
sorry. Yeah.
It makes sense. I'm just thinking that probably it's applicable to any inbuilt PHP function that can throw an exception, or any third-party library function that can throw an exception. That's at least what we have in our back vision. This is just a subset of what we validate. So why do we limit only to this? Because this is something that we know for sure is problematic and can cause real issues.
Yeah, because here we definitely know that those functions work with system resources. And another point here is that it goes a little in conflict with discouraged functions, because we have a list of functions we prefer not to use in Magento modules, and our suggestion is to use framework wrappers. So I'd prefer to add here the line that we apply this only to library, only to framework. Because in case if we will use function that starts with stream, curl, or socket in application, we will get the error that this function is discouraged. We already have this.
But the discouraged functions, I think, so which functions are those? I thought it's the ones that we do not recommend use for security reasons.
There are two set of rules. There are set for insecure functions like shell exec, system, etc. And we have discouraged functions. And here is the list of discouraged functions.
So we need to clarify that discouraged means they're discouraged in modules, but they're allowed in framework.
It's just a list of all PHP functions?
Not all of them. So, as Alex, could you please explain this approach about wrappers and frameworks, so everybody will be on the same page?
In general, we don't want to use any built-in functions directly from modules. Instead, we want to create wrapper in library and use that wrapper everywhere in APP code. And the only problem for now that we cannot introduce wrappers in patch releases. And in a small discussion, we get an agreement that it can, in scope of patch release, to suppress any failures related to this sniff with complete suppression. Maybe Elena, you could show example, and then create a task for release to go through the code base, find all these concrete suppressions, and create wrappers for those functions. We can potentially go and create wrappers for all functions, but I think also it's better to collect some suppressions and create wrappers for anything that is actually used or in the cloud direction, and then refactor existing files to use library wrappers.
Mm-hmm. So I'm just thinking if the sniff should be renamed somehow to encourage very wide discouraged, and as you mentioned, it's not in library, but if you look at the list, it already has, for example, is now, which is just not recommended in general. It's related to library. So, looks like it becomes just a place where anything that is discouraged. Back this one proper. I mean, it's good addition. But just having enough, but good to have it. I don't know.
Okay, so I will add my comment regarding library. So I believe this should be applied to framework only. It's my suggestion. Okay, I think that's it from coding standard. Yeah.
A quick question on this. Which functions do we want to, which functions we specified in that sniff?
With try catch?
No, not in the try catch. For the functions for which we need to create wrappers.
Here is the list. This is the list of discouraged functions. What is the question again?
Like we were just discussing sniff that checks that for a function that we use a wrapper instead of a function. I just wanted to see what are those functions. Okay. Okay. Makes sense. Okay, thank you.
Thanks. That's it from me.
Okay, thank you. We have one more topic from Joshua.
I have also a question, sorry. And if an extension developer using Stream or curl or something like that, what will happen? They get a warning, hey, don't use it, please implement a wrapper, or what they get? Because in some cases you need these functions for some use cases of the extension. Maybe it's currently I don't have a use case, but I think it can be possible to have a curl or need to open a connection to an order system, and maybe the framework doesn't support the option for set memory or set timeout or something like that, and for that reason I must implement by my own. And if we only check the framework, then maybe the developer forget to try catch and run in an error. Currently I'm not so sure about the use case, but I think it can be possible.
So I think it can be managed by the severity level. So I don't know, Elena probably can confirm that till some severity you probably still can accept extensions, but it would be good to create an issue or pull request to Magento framework, to the core of Magento, to have what is necessary in the future. So like this is something that we want to achieve, but I would assume that we still should be able to accept extensions if they use these functions. You're talking about discouraged functions right now, correct? Not about try-catch.
I speak about the try-catch stuff because if a extension developer forget the try-catch in their extension and using stream or something like that, then it can be maybe a problem.
So you say that we should not limit it to the framework, we should just validate everything. That's...
Yeah, this is what I mean. But then we have a problem with the Magento core, and I don't know how we can handle this problem.
So with Magento core, the problem that we have that we use stream without try-catch, or what?
Oh no, because of the discovered functions. Also, maybe the extension developer cannot use a stream or something like that, because then the extension will reject it of the usage of stream or something like that. But I think we should allow extension developer to use some functions to open connections. Maybe it can be helpful, but yeah, in the most cases it's correct to use the default framework stuff, but in some cases you have a use case, maybe you cannot use the framework.
Yeah, so that's what I'm saying, but this is about discouraged functions rule, that extension developer should not theoretically use, I don't know, curl, for example, in their extension directly. So that's
Okay.
that's what I'm saying, that probably EQP still should accept such extension, but there will be a warning or something. I don't know, Alana, maybe you can speak about it.
It is a warning right now.
Okay.
Yeah, but if he already uses something like curl, for example, we probably still should validate that it is at least wrapped in try-catch. So I don't know, Alana, you added, you have a note that we should validate only framework, but looks like we still need to validate at least extensions as well, because they may not be able to rely on the framework in all cases. Maybe we just should validate everything and do not have this exception. I don't know.
Okay.
Okay, so any other topics? Joshua wrote that we should disregard his topic for now. Anything
I have
else?
a quick question. Have a small question. How should we treat adding optional parameter in the API class constructor as a patch or minor change?
So again, right now, default behavior is the same as for any other function. I don't remember. It's minor, probably, right?
It's minor, but we have different. We were discussing this issue yesterday and have different opinions. So currently it's minor, but like there is a proposal to treat it as a patch change.
If somebody will do this proposal and discuss this, but we need arguments. Right now, this is a minor change. It should not be present in patch releases anyway. Still, we have a good approach is how to fight this problem like this. For instance, with blocks, we have view models, so you have a lot of functionality you have to avoid such changes. But my personal opinion, we should not allow shouldn't allow such changes in patch releases at all.
Yeah, so basically the idea was that we can allow this for classes which are not explicitly meant for extension. So we have a list of classes which are API but not explicitly meant for extension, because we have some classes like abstract sensible object or some other layer supertypes which you must extend if you want to do something.
This is kind of assumption that we will not break anybody, but we can guarantee this. Or if this is something that's really requested by product organization, yes, maybe. But in this case, product organization should communicate this directly, even through Twitter. That's okay, guys. We will introduce minor change in patch release. In other case, I don't see a reason why we have to do this.
So in my opinion, and we also were discussing it with Alex, that yes, there are different types of classes that we have. There are classes that you cannot avoid inheritance from. So we still have those classes. It's not something that we want to have, but this is something that exists. And for those cases, definitely this is a minor change. We should follow the same rules as we have for any other methods. For everything else, I think we just should write it down that this is not a significant change. Because there are
significant.
Yes, no. Like it can be patch change, because normally constructor is not part of the interface, right? We just have it being part of an interface just because of because people can extend them and extend classes. And in cases where it's unnecessary, I think we should not limit ourselves, because like we will be either not delivering some of the fixes because it will become impossible, or we will have unnecessary workarounds in places where we could implement something better. I don't see why we should limit ourselves. Instead, I propose to write down specific agreements and discuss it with community. That's what I actually was discussing with Alex.
Yeah, actually, I already created pull request to the docs regarding this item. Mm-hmm. And we may need to implement more sophisticated static test, which will make sure that it is patched by default, but we will create a list of explicit list of classes meant for extension, and for those classes it should be treated as minor.
So which pull request is it? Update contributing DoD, or is it different?
Yes.
Okay, adding optional parameter. Share screen. We still have some time, so let's discuss. I think it's an important topic. Okay, all backward incompatible changes by an architect. The following cases currently cause SVC failures, but do not require providing optional parameters to the constructor except for the classes explicitly met for extension, like construct extensible model. So we'll need the list here.
I assume that we should create static test. We should just fix our static test, and maybe we can, in scope of that task, we can also figure out the full list, and we can add it here as well.
Yeah, but until we have somebody to implement this test, let's.
But I think we need at least we have possibility to specify it in our CSV build. Mm-hmm. So we just now we don't have the rule for the constructor. We have the rule for the method, but we don't have the rule for the constructor. So probably we can add this rule into the static test.
Yeah, that's correct. The main goal. But for now, if you don't have somebody who will be implementing the test, so either we are setting and implementing the test, or let's figure out the rules in the first place and discuss with everybody, because we need feedback from the community as well, that this is something that will work for everybody. So let's figure out which classes.
At least we can fix it right now for the non-API classes, because it's the same for API and non-API. We don't have this rule for construction.
But for non-API, it shouldn't be coded.
Yeah, so it's difficult to fix it easily, because currently constructors are treated as regular methods. There is no difference. And for regular methods, it should be treated as minor change. In API classes. Yes.
So when we will be creating this rule, we will, when we will be creating this list of classes, we will be very strict about classes in this list. Like if this is not some well-known layer supertype, then we would say that this class is not meant by extension. For instance, we have some session manager, Magento framework session manager, and some classes extend this session manager, and potentially another extension may want to extend like this class, but we would say that this is we would not include this class in the list because we don't want this class to be extended. It doesn't look like it's a well-known super type, right? How would we decide what other classes meant for extension? If this are well-known layer super types only?
That was my idea, yes.
Okay.
Because usually, as Olga mentioned, we discourage inheritance. And the only case when we feel basically suggest inheritance is when we have to. And this is mostly for layer supertypes, because otherwise your class just will not be work. It just will not work with our framework.
Okay.
And what do you think? Do you still study?
I think, Magento doesn't recommend inheritance, but I see so many extensions they use inheritance for API classes. They are not so known because there are some protected method in there, or some a public method in there, or maybe a protected method, and I need to extend this protected method with my own code. It happens so many times. I see so often in extension. I think, yeah, it can be break something in some cases.
But it should be fine unless you try to customize this dependency. Like if you just inherit this argument, your argument is optional, and I don't think there will be any issue for you. If you just try to rely on protected methods, it should be okay. If you try to customize dependency, if you try to inject your, for example, like what can be the issue? Let's assume we have currently Magento 231, and then in Magento 232, for example, we introduce optional dependency in one of the classes. And you as extension developer pass custom value for that optional argument, and you expect that your logic will work somehow based on that customization. And if your extension is installed on Magento 231, where there is no such optional argument in constructor, your customization will not just work. And on Marketplace, there is no way to specify compatibility on patch level version. So if you release an extension, you will have to say that your extension is compatible with Magento 2.3, and obviously it may be broken depending on specific patch version. But that only happens if you actually try to inject custom version of that optional argument which was introduced. So do you think it is a big problem?
Most of
Currently,
cases, so it's better to do this, except some kind of urgent need.
I think another important point why extension developers develop extensions on the patch versions, not the minor, and not depend on the minor version. Because in patch releases we shouldn't release new functionality, but which probably you want to customize. So I think if your extension depends on the minor version, you won't have these problems.
Correct, but the problem is if you develop extension, let's say now, most likely you will develop it against latest 2.3, and you may just not know that specific argument was not present in previous patch release.
Yeah, but why it depends on the patch release?
So you should not, but it's possible that your extension will actually have that that you will try to customize.
Maybe there is not so many cases, but I think it's still possible, and there are so many extension developers there are not know about best practices in Magento. Also, yeah, the marketplace is really okay, but if you have a own marketplace or something like that, and the extension developer doesn't know about, hey, I don't should use inheritance and adding own parameters to the constructor, it maybe breaks. And I must check it how often and in which cases it breaks, but I think it can be possible. And I think if you have a patch release, you will check more your extension. Like if you have a minor, if you have a patch, you don't check so much your extension. Maybe you install it, and if you have a minor or major version, you check your extension more. This is my opinion, but I think, yeah.
So I guess it would make sense to make a decision about, we need to go and at least analyze some marketplace extensions.
Yeah. Also to define in which cases it breaks, and then have a proposal and see how many cases it will be, or and then if we know that, we can vote or upvote for this proposal, because in the last time some edge cases are not in mind of the core team, because they don't develop extension for customers, and we have to fix the stuff or this extension for, or fix the extension that the customer was buying. And sometimes I see some stuff that should not happen, not developed by Tech Division, developed by other developers, but yeah, it can happen, and we should define the cases, and this is my opinion, and then we should vote or don't accept this pull request.
Yeah, actually, from my opinion, if any changes in Magento is break some scenario. So if you don't follow our best practice, don't write test for your extension, any changes in Magento can break your extension. And if main reason to not accept this, that we can break some extension, okay, we always break some extension every with patch releases, because any changes can break some scenario. And for if we talk about functional break, it definitely, if you just return class 1 in an extension, have to expect minus and you break it, but from code point we don't change anything. So breaking extension is not point, I believe, here.
Yeah,
No,
because if you
I think what is important is predictability. You need to at least
but if extension follow our rules, so for example, if you depend on extend from API class, just depend on patch version, exact patch version. So you know that your application can possibly break with new patch version. And you check your extension on every patch. Just write test, and you will see breaking changes, and you can provide fix for this change. So.
It can be that way, but also I'm just not sure that we limit ourselves where it is really necessary. Because Lars also mentioned there are cases where extension developers extend from core class just because they don't know about best practices, and there are cases where it's just impossible to avoid inheritance. So I want to distinguish those two situations. In one situation, we need to provide probably some code style rules or other tests or other guidance, and in another case, we can we still need to make sure that we don't make such changes in patch release. So I don't know. I would
always can do not extend, because if you need to extend, you can just copy class in your extension and change it. And all responsibility on to resolve all issue will be on you.
So we actually say that if you extend the API class, you can depend on major version.
No, we
No,
don't
on
say
minor.
To the extent you can.
On minor.
On minor.
Extend.
No.
Okay,
And,
it says extend from abstract class. Okay.
Yeah, and I had in the past, I don't remember on the extension, but we had a patch. This was breaking an extension of adding a constructor parameter or something like that, because they don't use tasks. Yeah, the marketplace goes the way you should have tasks, and more tests are usable and get more practice or in Magento 2 or more known, but yeah, currently we don't have the state of any extension has tests and any developer knows about the best practices in Magento. And yeah, maybe it's the wrong way to don't allow changes to some methods because we have not developer or we have developers, they are not known about best practices, but I think, yeah, it's not a way to break extensions because we are allowing to adding some additional stuff or open our guidelines.
Mm-hmm. So I propose to continue this discussion probably in this pull request from Alex. I think we'll be adding more here. So basically it will be a list of significant changes and yeah, specifically about constructors. We'll need to define what classes should be considered, like for which classes we should consider changes in the constructor as minor or major change. So let's continue a discussion there. Maybe we'll have another meeting to discuss it, to proceed and
But
come up.
the main, but the main reason to treat constructors as a private, like again optional parameter, the constructor as a patch is that it's a private API of the class.
In my opinion, yes.
Okay.
Like if you follow the recommended composition principle, then you should not care about what happens with the constructor. The exception is where you cannot do it because Magento does not allow you. Okay, so we are running out of time. Thanks all, and yeah, let's continue this discussion separately. It's something that we need to resolve.
Yeah, cool. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.